Hello. Welcome to 10 at 10. My name is Michael Ramage. I'm the director of the Center for Computer and Information Technology at Murray State University. 10 at 10 is brought to you through a partnership between Murray State University, Grow West, the Technology Council of West Kentucky, KY Innovation, and local partners Sprocket Innovation in Paducah and the Kentucky Innovation Station in Madisonville. Let me start off with an apology. We got started a couple seconds late. Today I am working on a new streaming platform and wanted to work out a couple bugs before we got started, but hopefully you're seeing this and hearing this. And my hope and our hope is that you're going to be able to find this on a few more social media platforms today and in the coming weeks as well. Let me continue our discussion this week on getting started with cybersecurity in your small business. So if you want to go back on Facebook and look at the videos over the past month or so, you can see those steps that we talked about, that if you were getting started on cybersecurity, where would you start and what would you do? We talked about, first of all, creating a policy. Second of all, we talked about using strong and complex passwords. We talked about implementing security technology and thinking about the security technology that is with your the infrastructure that you already have first. So if you have antivirus software built in or some security software built into your operating system, use it. If you have firewall type functionality in your router, then use it. If you can do network address translation, there's a number of things that are easy, but then also adding technology and appliances and software as well. We talked about user awareness training, and then last week we started talking about security assessment, testing, auditing, that area of getting started. The testing, assessment, auditing, that is a very complicated topic that I wanted to spend a little bit more time on. I showed this slide last when we were together last week, and I actually got some feedback that it was overwhelming that there are this many frameworks to look at. Which ones do I use? How do I start? And let me say, actually, there's many more than what's on this slide. This was just an example that I found online. So it can be overwhelming. It can be really confusing. It can be a struggle. And actually, it can be enough of a struggle that organizations say, I just don't want to do it. So how do we get started? How do we get started in all of this? And I think it's important first to think about why we're doing this. What is the purpose in assessing or auditing our technology, our cybersecurity infrastructure, our program, our governance, our organization? And so first of all, it's important to understand why we want to do this. We want to do this to make sure that we're doing the things that we need to do. I've worked in positions over the last 20 years where we'll have a boss that goes to a conference. He comes back with the best, coolest, neatest thing in technology that maybe is something that we've already thought about, or maybe it's just a very small piece of an overall larger picture. And so what I mean by that is that if you go off to a conference and they say, hey, you need to implement a secure wireless in your organization. All right, so you implement secure wireless in your organization. That's great. And if you have wireless in your organization, I do hope that it is secure. However, there are so many other pieces that you need to think about, that you need to consider, that if the only piece of security that you had was secure wireless, then you're missing a huge amount of stuff. If you only went to conferences to get that information, then you're not doing the things that you need to do to keep your business safe. There are thousands of conferences every year. There are hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of hours worth of presentations about things that you could and should do in your organization. There's no person that's going to see them all. So you don't know everything. Even if you're a cybersecurity professional, you don't know everything that you should think about in your organization. So because of that, we want a framework to help us think through all the different pieces. That's really what these assessments, that's really what this auditing component is to look at some established and well thought through frameworks and think about how what you are doing in your organization stacks up to that framework. Because you probably don't know everything that you're supposed to do in your organization, we want to make sure that there's some framework, there's some compliance standard that would make sense for your organization. That's what we're trying to do. Now, how formal this process is up to you. If you're accepting credit cards in your organization, then you probably have a pretty formal process, or you should have a pretty formal process. If you're a healthcare organization, then you probably have a pretty formal process because you have to be HIPAA compliant. If you're an education entity, there's so many compliance requirements out there right now that you may have a formal process, but if you're a small business, it's possible that you don't have a formal process right now. So it may be an informal piece. Regardless, there are some things that you should think about. One of the most common is the cybersecurity framework that was established by NIST. It actually was created through executive order. President Obama issued an executive order to create this framework. And I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about the framework because, frankly, you can get into a lot of detail and we only have a few more minutes together today. But the framework was set up to have 5 different categories: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. And it was intended to be common, accessible language. It was intended to be adaptable over different technologies, life cycle phases, sectors. It was supposed to be broad enough that you could use it in a lot of different areas. They wanted it to be risk-based, and they wanted it to be based on international standards. It was also intended to be a living document, but guided by a lot of different perspectives. This isn't just a big business that is guiding this. This isn't just academia that's or public sector. It is intended to be for private, academia, public. It's intended to be utilized by large organizations, by small businesses as well. So this is something that you can think about for your organization, no matter how large your organization is. So what is in it? And this is the piece that I really like about it. So the first, well, actually, it's the second category that I mentioned was protect. So those are one of the 5 functions. It was identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Those are the 5 functions. So if you look in the far left column at the bottom, it says 5 functions. Those are the 5 functions. We are in the protect function on this slide. And this is just a screen grab of an Excel spreadsheet that you have as part of this framework to help guide you. Then there are 5 functions. Within that, there are 23 categories for you to consider, for your organization to consider. Within those 23 categories, there are 108 subcategories. So each of these have subcategories to think about as well. And then there are 6 informative references. So what that means is that it's very important for this cybersecurity framework to not be a standalone piece, for it to be connected to other frameworks, that isn't something that they're just doing on their own. And we'll talk about like the CIS top 20 maybe next week. But there's a NIST 800-53 document that we referenced last week. There's an ISO standard that we may talk about. There's a number of different standards that people think about when they're looking at securing their organization. This cybersecurity framework is intended to map up against those. So if we're thinking about identity management, authentication, and access control, which is this category, and the subcategory of identities are proofed and bound to credentials and asserted in interactions. That's the subcategory. Well, that maps up to these 6 different standards in this way, and it shows it on the screen. And you can see that for every single piece that you have within the framework. I think that's really important, and I think that's very valuable in thinking about it. Now, again, it can be complicated, and you can get as far into this as you want to get with your organization. I recommend that you start slow. I recommend that you go and, let me go back, and just think about these 5 areas: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Is your cybersecurity program addressing these 5 functions? That's a starting point. Matter of fact, in the implementation tiers talked about in the framework, there's 4 implementation tiers so that you can think about how you're implementing risk management, how you're implementing cybersecurity in your organization. Think through them. Start simple. Don't try to do too much too fast, particularly if you're a small organization with a limited budget and limited staff, but then build from there. Think through those pieces, and I think that you're going to find yourself in a better position. Now, I do want to talk about some of those specific frameworks that I referenced a minute ago, and we'll do that next time back here on 10 at 10. I appreciate you joining me today. I appreciate your patience for us getting started just a little bit late, and I hope that you have found this informative. If you have questions, please email me. Please contact me. Please let me know, and we can address your question in an upcoming episode of 10 at 10. Again, this is every week at 10 o'clock for 10 minutes. It's 10 o'clock Central Time for 10 minutes. Today's a little bit long, but I want to answer those questions that are on your mind. So please let me know what those questions are. You'll see our contact information on the next slide. And I thank you for joining us today on 10 at 10. Goodbye.